Hey guys, welcome to our Week 15 NFL Best Bets video. We'll be looking at every single game for this weekend for the Week 15 NFL season. There's actually some Saturday games, so we'll be looking at the Saturday games, Sunday games, and the Monday games. And this is the best bet. So we'll be looking at who's going to win, who's going to lose, what we predict the final score will be. So the money line, spread, and the over-under. Hit that like button and subscribe, and let's get things started. So starting out on Saturday, December 16th, 2023, at 1 p.m. on the NFL Network, we have the Minnesota Vikings sitting at 7-6, playing the 7-6 Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati comes into this game. They are 3-point favorites here at home, and the over-under is 40.5. When you're looking at the Vikings, this is a pretty banged up team. So obviously they lost Kirk Cousins. They traded for Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs had about 2 to 3 good games. Then he completely fell off the rails. He's been pretty bad the last 2 to 3 weeks. So they're now going with Mullins at quarterback. So with their number 3 option for quarterback. So they're banged up there. Justin Jefferson did come back. He's banged up. So the Vikings are basically limping into this game. Looking at the Bengals, they lost Joe Burrow for the season, but Jake Browning out of Washington has stepped into that role nicely. He's been gunslinging it for the last 2 weeks. He looks really good. They still have Chase. They still have Mixon, so this is a very loaded team. Jake Browning is getting balls to the playmakers. Looking at the team stats here, the Vikings average 20.5 points per game. Cincinnati averages 21.5 points per game. And on defense, the Vikings give up 18.6 points per game. Cincinnati gives up 22.1 points per game. So I'm going to go with the Bengals. They have the better backup quarterback. He has actually been playing better than Burrow so far this year. I have the Bengals winning this game, 24-14. I have them covering that spread, but I will be going with the under. The next game that we'll be looking at 4:30 on Saturday is the 7-6 Pittsburgh Steelers playing the 7-6 Colts. The Colts come into this game. They are 1.5 point favorites here. So this game is almost virtually a pick'em, and the over-under is 42.5. So both of these teams are still technically in the run for the playoffs, just like both the Vikings and the Bengals are still technically in the run for the playoffs. So they both have something to play for. Problem with the Steelers is they have absolutely no offense whatsoever. So Kenny Pickett did go down. There's a lot of hurt quarterbacks. There's a lot of backups playing this season, but he is out. They have Mitch Trubisky starting at quarterback. They weren't good at the quarterback position with Kenny Pickett. So they're actually even worse with Trubisky, but their saving grace is they have a really good defense led by TJ Watt. So based off of their defense, they can usually try to keep the game close. Looking at the Colts, they also lost their starting quarterback, and they have Gardner Minshew, who has been starting a majority of the season so far. Jonathan Taylor, he has been out for the last 2 to 3 weeks. He is questionable for this Saturday. So he might play, but it's probably not probable. But they still have Zach Moss. They still have Pittman. Gardner Minshew, he is one of those guys that can light it up. He can not light it up. It's kind of a coin flip right now. But when he's on, he has been pretty good. So looking at the team stats here, the Steelers average 16.2 points per game, so a pretty bad offense. The Colts average 24.2 points per game, so they can move the ball. And on defense, the Steelers give up 19.2 points per game. They have a very strong defense. Colts, they give up a lot of points. They give up 25.2 points per game, but thankfully for them, they're not playing a good offense this week. So I'm going to go with the Colts to get the win here. I have them winning 24-20. So I have them covering that spread, and I'm also going to go with the over. The next game that we'll be looking at, the final game for Saturday night at 8:15 on the NFL Network, we have the 7-6 Denver Broncos versus the 9-4 Detroit Lions. Detroit comes into this game. They are 4 points. They are 4-point favorites at home, and the over-under is 47.5. With the Denver Broncos, they obviously went on a 5-game losing streak. They lost 1 game. They did win last weekend, and we did predict them to win. But as of right now, they're 6-1 in their last 7 games. This is a very good team technically on paper. Russell Wilson, he's just not doing anything to lose the game. He's not doing anything to win the game, but he's just being efficient. Throw for about 2 to 3 touchdowns, throw for 150 yards to 200 yards, just don't throw any picks. They do have a pretty bad rush defense. For the Lions, they started out the year really hot. Some people had them as Super Bowl favorites. They had a top 10 offense. They had a top 10 defense. But for about the last 6 weeks, they've been looking really bad. They've had about 2 to 3 turnovers every single game the last 2 to 3 weeks, and they've also been giving up a lot of points. Their defense has been getting torched. But the Broncos have one of the worst rush defenses in the country. So this kind of lines up perfectly for the Lions to try to get things back on track. They have Gibbs, they have Montgomery, so look for them to be running the ball down the Broncos' throat here. Take the ball out of Jared Goff's hands because he's kind of had a little rough patch for the last 5 to 6 weeks, but he is a pretty decent quarterback. When he's needed, he can get first downs. Looking at the total team stats here, so the Broncos come in, they average 22.1 points per game. The Lions 26.2 points per game. They still have a pretty good offense. And on defense, the Broncos give up 23.8 points per game. And the Lions, they've been getting torched the last 3 weeks. They give up 24.2 points per game. But I'm going to go with the Lions to get things back on track. Both teams are still fighting for the playoffs. The Lions are obviously in the better position right now, but they are the favorite. They are the better team. So I have the Lions getting the win here, 28-21. So I have them covering that spread, and I'm also going with the over. The next game that we'll be looking at, we're now moving on to our Sunday slate. So December 17th at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 5-8 Chicago Bears versus the 8-5 Cleveland Browns. The Browns at home are 3-point favorites here, and the over-under is 38.5. So I have this being a pretty low-scoring game. When you're looking at the Bears, so Justin Fields was hurt for a while. Had he played the whole year, this would be a 500 team. He's been having a really good year. He's throwing, and he's definitely running for a lot of balls. So he's basically a fantasy dream right now. He's racking up a lot of points there. He's not a bad quarterback. Some people think that they might be trying to trade him this offseason, and they might be trying to get a first-round draft pick at the quarterback position. Whatever they do, if they trade him, their goal is to try to make him look as good as possible so that they can get the most for him. Looking at the Cleveland Browns here, so obviously they lost Deshaun Watson, they lost Chubb. This is a really banged-up team, but they have a top-5 defense. That's their saving grace right now. That's what's keeping them competitive. They went out. They signed Joe Flacco. That's a savior right there because Joe Flacco's played a lot of football. He knows don't do anything stupid. You know that you can win with Joe Flacco. He won a Super Bowl with the Ravens doing absolutely nothing, just not getting turnovers, get first downs when you have to get first downs, and just rely on your defense and special teams to keep the game close. That's what this team is. They have a top 5 defense. They have Amari Cooper. Just don't do anything to lose the game, and you can win with Joe Flacco. That's a fact. Looking at the team stats here, Chicago, they average 20.8 points per game. The Browns average 22.2 points per game. And on defense, the Bears give up 23.8 points per game, and the Browns give up 20.9 points per game. They have a very good defense. So I have the Browns getting the win here, beating the Bears. I have them winning 21-17, so kind of a close game there. Justin Fields is very good. He can run, so they'll be trying to bottle him up. But I have them covering the spread, but I'm actually going to be going with the under as of right now. But I do think that this game could potentially get bet down just a little bit. Next on Sunday at 1 p.m. on CBS, you have the 6-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers visiting the 6-7 Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is 3.5-point favorites here, and the over-under is 41.5. Looking at these two teams, they're both 6-7. They're both still technically in the hunt for the playoffs, so they both have a lot to play for. Tampa Bay obviously has Baker Mayfield. He's having a pretty good year so far. He's not doing anything to lose them the game. This is probably his strongest year since his rookie campaign. They do have a pretty good defense, and they do have playmakers at the wide receiver position. With the Packers, Jordan Love started out the year really bad, but he has come on the last 2 months, has been playing really well, and their defense has been playing a lot better. They did lose this past weekend, but I'm not taking that as some calling sign that they've completely fallen off the rails just yet. But the Buccaneers had a good win last weekend. Baker Mayfield won that game at the very end of the game. Baker's closing in on 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 picks. Love closing in on 3,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 11 picks. And the team stats here, Tampa Bay averages 20.2 points per game. Green Bay, 21.5 points per game. And on defense, these teams are virtually even. Tampa Bay gives up 20.8 points per game. Green Bay gives up 20.5 points per game. I have Green Bay getting the win here at home, getting things back on track, winning 24-20, covering the spread, and I'm going with the over. The next game that we'll be looking at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 7-6 Houston Texans versus the 5-8 Tennessee Titans. Tennessee is 3-point favorites here at home, and the over-under is 37.5. The reason Tennessee is favored as of right now is probably due to C.J. Stroud got knocked out of the game last weekend. He did get a concussion. He's still technically in concussion protocol. He has not been rolled out for the game this Sunday. If he doesn't play, it's probably going to be Mills that will be playing at quarterback. But that would be a massive loss, obviously, for the Texans, because C.J. Stroud is basically the offensive rookie of the year right now. He's closing in on 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 5 picks. So he's been very efficient. But you do have Collins there at wide receiver. So if the backup has to play, he does have a primary number 1 target. But I'm going to be basing this prediction off of C.J. Stroud playing. So I'm kind of going out on a limb there. But I do think that as of right now, he will probably start. For Tennessee, they did lose Ryan Tannehill. That's not a loss at all. The guy was never good. They have Will Levis starting at quarterback. He's a rookie. He's been having a pretty strong rookie season. He's definitely better than Tannehill. They still have Derrick Henry, and they still have a pretty decent defense. Looking at the total team stats here, Houston averages 22.1 points per game. Tennessee, 18.4 points per game. And on defense, these teams are virtually even. Houston gives up 21.5 points per game. Tennessee gives up 21.7 points per game. Like I said, I'm basing this off of C.J. Stroud playing. So I have the Texans getting the win here. So I'm going to go with that +3. I have the Texans winning 21-17. So I'm also going with the over. The next game at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 5-8 New York Jets versus the 9-4 Miami Dolphins. Miami, as of right now, is 8.5-point favorites here, and the over-under is 37.5. So the Jets had that big win this past weekend. Zach Wilson, they've had a complete quarterback carousal. They had Rodgers go down. They had Zach Wilson start. He stunk. They went to their third string. He stunk. They went back to Zach Wilson this past weekend. The guy throws for like 300 to 350 yards. I'm not taking that as some sign that that's going to be a permanent staple going forward. Zach Wilson is not that good. He's just a serviceable backup. Nothing more than that. He's not going to throw for 350 yards versus the Dolphins because I think the Dolphins are going to put him under a lot of pressure. Dolphins have a pretty good rush defense, so they will be looking to force Zach Wilson into long third down passes, and that could be a problem. For the Dolphins, obviously they had a massive lead this past weekend. They coughed it up. That was a complete disaster that they let that happen. But this is one of the best offenses in the NFL right now. They have Stewart, they have Mossard, they have Archin, they have Hill, Waddle, Barrios. They are loaded at every single position. This team is just too good. That's why their spread is always usually double digits. Looking at the total team stats here, the Jets average 15.5 points per game, a very bad offense. The Dolphins average more than double. They average 31.6 points per game. And on defense, Jets do have a top 10 defense, so they definitely can potentially keep any game close so that Zach Wilson just has to get some field goals. But they give up 19.8 points per game. The Dolphins give up 22.6 points per game. I have the Dolphins cruising to the win here, getting things back on track after losing that game Monday night. I have them winning 31-17, covering the spread, and I'm going with the over. The next game that we'll be looking at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 8-5 Kansas City Chiefs. I think they're riding a 3-game losing streak right now, versus the New England Patriots sitting at 3-10. Kansas City comes into this game. They are 7.5-point favorites here on the road, a very big spread on the road, and the over-under is 37.5. So with the Chiefs, they've been completely backsliding, not due to their defense. They have a top 5 defense technically. It's due to their offense. So that hasn't been the problem for the last few years, but everybody on that team is butterfingers right now. Outside of Kelsey, they do not have a number 1 receiving threat. So that's a big problem. A lot of guys dropping the ball. Someone has to step up, but they still have Patrick Mahomes. They still can right the ship. They have a lot of experience there with Andy Reid, and they still have that good defense to keep things close. So that's a really good defense versus a atrocious, pathetic Patriots offense. They did win this past weekend. Everyone slow down. Zappe threw for 3 touchdowns. That's probably never going to happen again from this point going forward. I don't know why the Patriots won that game. I thought that they were trying to get the first pick in the first round. But then they won that game, and they probably took potentially themselves out of consideration. So I don't know what Bill Belichick's doing. I definitely don't think Kraft wanted to win that game. They want to draft a franchise quarterback and reset this team, unless Bill Belichick is already out the door and he's just trying to get as many wins as possible. But I guess we'll find out in about 3 to 4 weeks. Looking at the total team stats here, Kansas City averages 22.5 points per game. The Patriots, a very lowly 13.0 points per game. And on defense, Kansas City gives up 17.5 points per game, and the Patriots gave up 20.9 points per game. I have this game not being close. I have the Chiefs getting back in the win category, winning 27-14, covering the spread, and I'm going with the over. The next game at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the New York Giants at 5-8, visiting the 6-7 New Orleans Saints. New Orleans is 6-point favorites here, and the over-under is 39.5. With the Giants, obviously they did lose Daniel Jones. That's not a loss in any way whatsoever. The guy has been a complete disaster. But they've been playing Tommy DeVito, who's basically been getting a lot of attention. He's been playing really well for the last 3 weeks. So prop to him, props to the Giants. That probably has Giants fans pretty pumped up. So that's a pretty good story. So they've been playing well. Obviously, the story's bound to end at some point because just statistically, at some point, you're going to lose. And it's very probable that they lose to the Saints because the Saints have a pretty good defense. They're going to put a lot of pressure on DeVito. The Saints' biggest problem is their offense. They have playmakers. They have Kamara. They have Olave. The issue is Derek Carr himself cannot throw accurately past 5 yards. He's a shell of himself. I don't know what happened to him, but he cannot throw the long ball anymore, and he's just not very accurate these days. Looking at the total team stats here, the Giants average almost as bad as the Patriots. They average 14.1 points per game. Saints average 21.9 points per game. And on defense, the Giants give up 24.2 points per game, and the Saints give up 20.1 points per game. The Giants' defense has been playing better recently. DeVito is probably the main cause of that because he has been getting first down, so he's been taking pressure off of them. But I have the Saints getting a win here at home, winning 20-17. So I do not have them covering the spread, so I'm going with that +6, and I am also going with the under also. The next game that we'll be looking at 1 p.m. on Fox, we have the 6-7 Atlanta Falcons visiting the 1-2 Carolina Panthers. The Falcons are 3-point favorites here, and the over-under is 33.5. They have this game being a very low-scoring game. Falcons are still technically in the playoff hunt also. Their biggest problem is Ritter at quarterback. They do not have a true quarterback. That's what's holding them back. He's had some decent games. He's had a lot of bad games. The guy just can't get the ball to the playmakers. They don't fully use Bijan Robinson as much as they should. They have so many weapons. They have Robinson. They have Pitts. They have London. They have a great running game. They have a great receiving game. Biggest issue is the quarterback. For the Panthers, the biggest issue is everything. They basically don't have anything going. They have Bryce Young at the quarterback position. He's not having a good season so far. The guy is a rookie, so we're not going to hold anything on him there. Plus, the coach got fired. Them from the top to the bottom, it's a complete disaster right now. They also don't have a number 1 pick, so they don't have any pick for the first round, so they don't have anything to play for. They don't have anything to lose for because they're not going to get rewarded with the top pick. Falcons at least are trying to fight to get to the playoffs. When you're looking at the total team stats here, the Falcons do come in. They are averaging, as of right now, 19.3 points per game. Panthers average 15.2 points per game. And on defense, the Falcons give up 20.7 points per game, and the Panthers give up a very high 26.2 points per game. So I have the Falcons getting the win here. I have them winning 24-20, covering the spread, and I will be going with the over. We're now moving on to our 4:05 slot. So at 4:05 p.m. on CBS, we have the 4-9 Washington Commanders versus the 6-7 LA Rams. The Rams come into this game. They are 6.5-point favorites here, and the over-under is 50.5. So Vegas thinks this game is going to be a shootout, and I definitely understand why. With the Washington Commanders, they have absolutely no defense at all. Ron Rivera is a dead man walking. The guy should have been fired 2 years ago. He will definitely be getting fired at some point, either this year or once this season ends. Their defense is bad. That's his calling card. They have Sam Howell. Sam Howell is having a pretty good year considering the pressure that he's under. He's closing in on 3,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, 14 picks. So he has a lot of picks, but he's the most hit, most sacked, most pressured quarterback. But the guy can throw for some yards, and he also scrambles. The Rams, obviously, they are actually having a pretty decent year so far this year. Stafford is kind of having a comeback year. They have Kupp, they have Nakua, and they have Williams at running back. So they can move the ball, they can get first downs, and the Washington Commanders won't be able to do anything to stop them from doing that. Washington's coming in, they average 20.1 points per game. The Rams average 23.0 points per game. And on defense, the Washington Commanders gave up 30.4 points per game. 30.4 points per game in the NFL. That's pathetic. And the Rams give up 22.3 points per game. So I have the Rams getting the win here. 28-21, so covering the spread, but I will actually just barely be going with the under, but that line could potentially move down by Sunday. The next game at 4:05 p.m. on CBS, we have the 10-3 San Francisco 49ers versus the 3-10 Cardinals. San Francisco comes into this game. They are 12-point favorites, and the over-under is 47.5. So they have the 49ers beating the crap out of the Cardinals. Cardinals did beat the Cowboys earlier this season, so you can't say that it can't happen. Plus, this is pro football, so anything's possible. Cardinals do have Kyler Murray back. He's been playing all right, but this is not a very well-structured team. There's some rumors that they're trying to trade him in the offseason, that they're trying to get a top pick for the quarterback position. We don't really know as of right now, but technically this is not a very good team. For the 49ers, this is probably the best roster top to bottom. They have one of the best offenses, a top 3 offense and a top 3 defense. This team is loaded. When you look at the playmakers, you have Brock Purdy closing in on 3,600 yards, 25 touchdowns, 7 picks. You have Christian McCaffrey. You have Kittle. You have Debo. You have Ayuk. This team is just loaded. So many playmakers, and they added Chase Young to their defense, so their defense is even better. And there's just, unfortunately, there's not much to say about the Cardinals. They have Brown. They have Kyler Murray. That's about it. Looking at the team stats here, the 49ers average 29.2 points per game, so a top 3 offense. The Cardinals average 17.7 points per game. And on defense, the 49ers, they give up 15.8 points per game. Top 3 defense, and the Cardinals give up 25.5 points per game. That's why the spread is so high. I have the 49ers winning this game 31-17, covering the spread, and I'm also going with that over as well. The next game at 4:25 p.m. on Fox, we have the 10-3 Dallas Cowboys. They've been hot for the last 5 to 6 weeks. They are coming off of a beatdown of the Eagles. They will be playing the Buffalo Bills, who sit at 7-6. Buffalo is 2-point favorites here, and the over-under is 50.5. So they also have this game pretty much being a shootout as well. These are 2 of the better structured rosters. The Bills are a lot better than their 7-6 record. They've just had a lot of issues. They have a top 10 offense, a top 10 defense, but the problem is when the offense plays well, the defense doesn't play well. When the defense plays well, the offense doesn't play well. They can never get the team on the same page at the same time. If they ever do, this is a Super Bowl caliber roster. They just haven't gotten things right. They're still in the playoff hunt, though. They have a lot to play for. But you have Dak Prescott, who a lot of people have him as the MVP right now. The guy's closing in on 3,600 yards. But you also have Josh Allen closing in on 3,500 yards. They can throw it. Both teams can run it. Looking at the total team stats here, the Cowboys, on offense, they average 32.4 points per game. A top 2 offense. The Bills aren't too far behind. They average 26.8 points per game. And on defense, both teams are pretty good. The Cowboys give up 17.9 points per game. The Bills give up 18.8 points per game. I think this game is 50-50. I don't want to go anywhere near this game because I think either team can win. But I'm actually going to go with the +2. I have the Cowboys getting the win on the road, winning 28-27. Cowboys do play better at home. So there is the potential they could lose this game. They are on the road. It's probably going to be really cold. And do not underestimate the Bills. If the Bills win this game, I would in no way be surprised because, like I said, I think they're one of the best teams in the country. They've just had a lot of issues so far this year, getting things right at the same time. But I have the Cowboys winning 28-27, so I'm going with that +2, and I'm also going with the over here. The next game at 8:20 p.m. on NBC, the final Sunday night game, we have the 10-3 Baltimore Ravens, one of the better structured teams in the country, visiting the 8-5 Jacksonville Jaguars. So this game has a lot of build-up here. Both teams are probably going to make the playoffs. The Baltimore Ravens have been one of the hottest teams for the second half of the season, whereas the Jags, the last 2 weeks, they've been slipping. Trevor Lawrence did get banged up. He is pretty hobbled right now. Their offense has been making some errors. Defense has been giving up a lot of points. But Baltimore comes into this game. They are 3.5-point favorites here. The over-under is 42.5. But look for the Jags to get the ship right at some point. And then you also have to be thinking that the Ravens might get caught off guard at some point. They've been playing so well, so they're probably due for a loss here. But when you look at these team stats here, Lamar Jackson is going off. He's closing in on 3,000 yards. He's also closing in on 700 yards rushing. Trevor Lawrence is not having the season that he had last year. A lot of turnovers, but still a pretty decent season so far. Looking at the total team stats here for both teams, the Ravens have a top 5 offense. They have a top 5 defense. So like I said, one of the better rosters in the country. They average 27.8 points per game. The Jags average 24.0 points per game. And on defense, the Ravens only give up 16.8 points per game. And the Jags give up 22.3 points per game. So even though the Jags are due to get things back on track, if they win this game, I would not be surprised because they're due for a win. They're on a losing streak. So it has to end at some point. Could very well end here. But I'm going to go with the Ravens on the road. I have the Ravens winning 30-24, covering the spread, and I'm going with the over. The final game is our Monday night game. Thankfully, this week there's only one Monday night game, which is the way that it should be. So Monday, December 18th at 8:15 on ABC, we have the 10-3 Philadelphia Eagles, who are riding a 2-game losing streak. They just got steamrolled by the Cowboys this past week. They are playing the 6-7 Seattle Seahawks. The Eagles are 3.5-point favorites here, and the over-under is 47.5. So Eagles, just like some of the other teams, they're riding a losing streak right now. So that's due to end at some point. Look for the Eagles to be getting things back on track. Hurts is having not the year that he had last year, but he is also banged up right now. He's been limping around. He's throwing a lot of picks. But they do have a top 3 offensive line right now. They still have Swift. They still have Brown. They still have Devontae Smith. So this is a really good team with really good playmakers. Defense has had a lot of holes so far this year. They were the least talked about 10-1 team. I was saying that they were overrated. They were due for some losses. A very good team, but they were not a one-loss team. They did lose 2 games, so now they're due for the win. And then you have the Seahawks sitting at 6-7. They have Smith. They have a lot of wide receiver threats right now, but it's probably time that maybe the Seahawks think about drafting a franchise quarterback. But the Eagles average 26.3 points per game. Seattle averages 21.5 points per game. And on defense, the Eagles give up 24.7 points per game. And Seattle gives up 24.5 points per game. So I have the Eagles getting things back on track here, ending the losing streak. This is a very talented team. I have the Eagles winning 28-24, covering the spread. And I'm also going to go with the over. So that's my Sunday best bets for those Saturday, Sunday, and Monday games for week 15 of the NFL season. If you have any comments, any opinions, drop them below and I will make sure to respond. Hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks.